Documentary of the life of Mark Twain. Documentary created by Hunter Ng, Shamita Hatangadi, and Jacob Welsh. On November 30, 1835, in the town of Florida, Missouri, the premature birth of its most famous son was witnessed. Samuel Langhorne Clemens was the sixth child of 7. 3 of those 7 died at infancy. His parents were John Marshall and Jane Lambton Clemens. Little did John and Jane know, their son Samuel would one day be known as America's most famous literary icon, Mark Twain. Mark Twain, or Samuel, was a famous writer who some would call the American mostly because of his most popular writings, Adventures of Huckleberry Finn and The Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Not only was he a famous American writer, but he was also categorized as a riverboat pilot, journalist, lecturer, entrepreneur, and inventor. Approximately 4 years after his birth, in 1839, the Clemens family moved 35 miles east to the town of Hannibal, where he would spend his life until the age of 17. At 15 years of age, Clemens got a job working at a newspaper. He got this job because of his family's desperate need of income. Hannibal is along the banks of the Mississippi, making it a frequent stop for steamboats. Mississippi was also a slave state at the time. His father owned one slave while his uncle owned multiple slaves. At the time, Missouri was a slave state. Sam's father owned one slave and his uncle owned several. In fact, it was on his uncle's farm that Sam spent many boyhood summers playing in the slave quarters, listening to tall tales and the slave spirituals that he would enjoy throughout his life. Samuel's father was a judge, and he built a 2-story frame house in 1844 at the address 206 Hill Street, which is today a museum called the Mark Twain Boyhood Home and Museum. Samuel was kept indoors as a child because of poor health. By age 9 he recovered from his disease and was able to join the rest of the town's children outside. He then attended a private school in Hannibal. When Samuel was 12, his father died of pneumonia, and at 13, Samuel left school to become a printer's apprentice for a local newspaper. His job was to arrange the type for each story in the newspaper, which allowed him to read the news of the world while completing his job. After 2 short years, he joined his brother Orion's newspaper as a printer and editorial assistant. It was here that Samuel found he enjoyed writing. Jacob, at 17, he left Hannibal behind for another printer's job in St. Louis. While in St. Louis, Clemens became a river pilot's apprentice. He became a licensed river pilot in 1858. Clemens' pseudonym, Mark Twain, comes from his days as a river pilot. It is a river term which means 2 fathoms or 12 feet when the depth of water for a boat is being sounded. Mark Twain means that it is safe to navigate. Because the river trade was brought to a standstill by the Civil War in 1861, Clemens began working as a newspaper reporter for several newspapers all over the United States. In 1870, Clemens married Olivia Langdon, and they had 4 children, 1 of whom died in infancy and 2 who died in their 20s. Their surviving child, Clara, lived to be 88, and had 1 daughter. Clara's daughter died without having any children, so there are no direct descendants of Samuel Clemens living. Twain began to gain fame when his story, The Celebrated Jumping Frog of Calaveras County, appeared in the New York Saturday Press on November 18, 1865. Twain's first book, The Innocents Abroad, was published in 1869, The Adventures of Tom Sawyer in 1876, and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn in 1885. He wrote 28 books and numerous short stories, letters and sketches. Mark Twain passed away on April 21, 1910. His childhood home is open to the public as a museum in Hannibal, and Calaveras County in California holds the Calaveras County Fair and Jumping Frog Jubilee every 3rd weekend in May. Walking tours are given in New York City of places Twain visited near his birthday every year.